The MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour is brought to you locally by SIT Mutual Fund Group, pure no-load mutual funds managed by Twin Cities-based SIT Investment Associates, Federated Insurance Companies, business insurance specialists for over 90 years, the national law firm of Robbins, Kaplan, Miller, and Cerisi, providing comprehensive legal services with 8 offices nationwide. The Bayport Foundation, supported by Anderson Windows and Patio Doors. C.G. Rhine Galleries, specialists in fine art sales and rentals for home and office. And by Lyman Lumber Company, the professional builders supply center, serving the Twin Cities from Chanhassen.
Good evening. I'm Kwame Holman in Washington.
And I'm Robert MacNeil in New York. After our summary of the day's top stories, we have extended excerpts from the Senate's health reform debate. Then 3 key players in the House discuss what's blocking the president's crime bill. Charlene Hunter-Galt continues her conversations on preventing teenage violence. Tonight, a juvenile court judge in Atlanta. Finally, essayist Amai Wallach looks at the work of artist Willem de Kooning.
Major funding for the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM. Supermarket to the world. And by New York Life, yet another example of New York Life's wise investment philosophy. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the annual financial support from viewers like you.
The Senate continued its debate on health care reform today. It centered on the bill proposed by Majority Leader George Mitchell, which would phase in universal coverage by subsidizing the poor. Earlier today, the American Association of Retired Persons endorsed both the Mitchell plan and one offered by House Majority Leader Richard Gephardt. President Clinton today urged lawmakers to put aside their almost hysterical fear of change and move forward on the bills. Here's a sampling of today's debate.
This bill has severe problems, and frankly, I don't think it can be fixed. This Clinton-Mitchell bill, as I see it, is a roll of the dice, and the stake, the bet that is enormously high, 1/7 of the American economy.
It's in our power to produce a bill that eases the burdens of families and businesses and children in every state and town of this country. It's in our reach to work out our differences and put our energies into achieving positive results. It is now up to us, each of us, of both parties, to prove that we can turn our years of words about health care into deeds that extend Americans the basic health security that can never, ever be taken from them.
Earlier today, the Senate rejected an amendment by North Carolina Republican Senator Jesse Helms that would delay the health care debate for a year. In a preliminary analysis, the Congressional Budget Office today predicted that Senator Mitchell's plan would likely cover 95% of all Americans by 1997 without employer mandates. The CBO also said the bill would probably reduce the federal deficit slightly. However, it would increase national health expenditures. We'll have more on the debate right after the news summary. Kwame?
Agriculture Secretary Mike Espy today denied allegations he illegally took gifts from a company his department regulates. The Justice Department has been investigating whether Espy accepted free sports tickets and travel from the nation's largest poultry company, Tyson Foods of Arkansas. Yesterday, Attorney General Janet Reno requested the appointment of an independent counsel in the case. She said there were reasonable grounds to continue the investigation. Espy had this reaction earlier today.
I am pleased that this matter is moving forward because from my point of view, every step along the way is a step closer to complete exoneration. I have cooperated with the FBI completely since February when I was first contacted about this matter. I've cooperated with the Justice Department, and I will be completely cooperative with the independent counsel, whoever is selected. I have done nothing wrong. I have answered all the questions. I have certainly not misused my office to favor poultry over meat or anyone over anyone else. I can tell you that right now. And as this matter is looked into, I'm sure I'll be clear.
The newly appointed Whitewater Independent Counsel today pledged to build on the investigation of his predecessor, Robert Fisk. At the same time, Kenneth Starr said he was required to make an independent judgment in the case. The former Republican Solicitor General will be looking into President Clinton's business dealings while he was governor of Arkansas. Some Democrats have criticized Starr as being too partisan. Today, President Clinton said he would cooperate with Starr, adding, "I just want to get it done." Meanwhile, attorneys for Mr. Clinton asked a federal court to dismiss a sexual harassment suit brought against him by a former Arkansas state worker. The incident, which the president denies, allegedly occurred when he was governor.
CIA and Pentagon officials today denied claims that Congress was kept in the dark about a massive new spy project. The controversy involves the construction of a spy satellite headquarters near Washington, D.C. Work began on the $310 million complex in 1990. Earlier this week, members of the Senate Intelligence Committee publicly complained they'd not been adequately informed of its size or cost. This afternoon, administration officials told the committee they had provided information about the building, but they pledged more.
I want to pledge to you that the review we will be undertaking will be forthright and it will be constructive. It will involve addressing many of the issues that you specifically raised. Why wasn't there a specific project or authorization with specific project cost? Secondly, why was this project funded incrementally within the base rather than by other financial procedures? My point is that our inquiry will address, as I know this committee is interested in, specific attention to the details of what happened in this case and to assure that we can go forward with assurance that we have our joint interest in efficient management of the intelligence community and the taxpayer resources fully in the front of our minds.
Yesterday, President Clinton ordered the inquiry into the project, which he learned about from a member of the committee.
26 Cubans were taken into custody by Florida immigration officials today. They apparently hijacked a 30-foot government-owned boat on Monday and made their way to the Florida Keys. Cuban officials accused them of killing a Navy officer on board. The boat people denied the charge. FBI and immigration officials plan to question them about the trip. 14 other Cubans made their way to Florida today on board a crop dusting plane. They all are members of the same family. Immigration authorities have taken them into custody. They are expected to seek political asylum.
Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat held a meeting today in the Gaza Strip. The two leaders discussed ways to speed up the peace process. We have a report narrated by Philippa Marr of Worldwide Television News.
The Erez checkpoint on the Israeli-Gaza border became the venue for a meeting between the PLO chairman Yasser Arafat and the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. It was an historic occasion. The first face-to-face encounter between the two men since Arafat returned to the Gaza Strip, which has been occupied for 27 years by Israel. There was some accord. Rabin agreed to allow thousands more workers into Israel, easing the Gaza Strip's economic woes. But the tension contrasted sharply with the rapport that was evident between Rabin and Jordan's King Hussein when they met last week. Rabin offered words of hope.
I hope that on the Israeli side, the Palestinian side, tension will be reduced, violence will be reduced.
And as a gesture towards peace between Jews and Palestinians, the Israeli President Ezer Weizman released 8 Palestinian women from prison following a direct request by the PLO leader. All the women are from East Jerusalem and the West Bank. Remaining differences between the Palestinians and the Israelis are narrowing.
The UN commander in Bosnia threatened airstrikes against both Serb and Muslim forces today. The threat came after the two sides fired on each other in the Sarajevo area. The UN has insisted the 12-mile area around Sarajevo remain free of heavy weapons. It was the first time the Muslim-led Bosnian army has been threatened with airstrikes.
All 160 people aboard a Korean Airlines jetliner escaped safely today after their plane crashed while attempting to land on a South Korean island. The plane, which had skidded off the runway, burst into flames just after the passengers and crew left it. 8 people suffered minor injuries. Investigators are looking into the cause of the accident. An airline spokesman blamed it on strong winds from a typhoon that was approaching the resort island at the time.
That's our summary of the day's top stories. Now it's on to the healthcare debate, the crime bill, teenage violence, and the artist Willem de Kooning.
First tonight, we go to the long-awaited debate on health care reform that is underway on the floor of the United States Senate. The debate could last several weeks, now that efforts to stop all talk on health care have been pushed aside. The day began with consideration of a proposal by North Carolina Republican Jesse Helms that could have delayed action on health care reform legislation until next year.
Now here's the NBC Wall Street Journal poll. The red, 61% say wait. 34% say pass the bill now.
But this morning, a majority of senators said, in effect, don't wait. And on a party-line vote, the Senate voted to move forward with debate.
Without objection, the motion to table is agreed to.
Those party lines were drawn last night when the debate on health care began, and the majority and minority leaders stated their positions.
My approach is to build on the existing American health care system of private insurance and expand it to those not now included. Americans who can't afford insurance, people with an illness that insurers won't cover, and people between jobs. My plan would move most of the persons now covered under Medicaid into the same system of private insurance and care as the rest of us. Put another way, my plan would reduce one of the largest government programs, Medicaid, and encourage those in that system to buy private insurance policies. My bill includes all of the insurance market reforms on which there is broad agreement. Insurance companies won't be allowed to reject applicants for pre-existing conditions. Insurance will travel with the person, so Americans won't be locked into jobs. Policy renewal will be guaranteed, so people who become ill aren't cut off from coverage just when they need it the most. My bill creates incentives for cost control through the competitive pressures of employers and consumers looking for the best priced coverage. Private price competition among insurers is the best way to find out where the fat lies in insurance coverage. As long as there are incentives to look for price economies, the private system will shake out those who cannot compete by price. My bill is designed to encourage that process without compromising the quality of care.
Affordability and accessibility, in my view, are the important two words. Forget all the others, affordability and accessibility. Everybody wants to help those who are blocked from getting insurance because of a pre-existing condition. We believe we can make health care more affordable and more accessible, and we can take care of the pre-existing condition and portability and malpractice reform and pooling for small business and probably 25 other things that if you had a vote in this chamber, it would be 99 to 1. There'd probably be one who didn't get the message. But it'd be almost unanimous. We believe we can do that without new taxes, without having the government tell you what will be included in your health insurance, and without, in many areas, putting federal bureaucrats in charge of your health care system. Seems to me this debate's just too important. Has already been stated by the majority leader to degenerate into false accusations and partisan bickering, and it's too important to be completed in any rushed or haphazard manner. And there are a lot of questions that are going to be asked by members on both sides over the next several weeks. And if we stick to the facts, we may find the facts, and we may agree on some changes, and we may come out of here yet with something that the American people would accept. But what I see developing now is a 51-vote strategy where we're asked to clean up the bill so others can vote for it. I'm not certain that's a strategy.
The debate resumed this afternoon with West Virginia Democrat Jay Rockefeller endorsing the Mitchell plan because he said it is the best plan for the people of his state.
Senator Mitchell's bill includes prescription drugs and long-term care, the very proposal, in fact, that David Pryor and I made in the Finance Committee to guarantee home and community-based care to millions of people, not just older, but people of all ages, since 40% of people who need long-term care are indeed younger than 65. The bill has essential provisions to address the chronic shortage of primary care physicians all over our country, in both rural America and in our inner cities. We spend billions and billions of hard-earned taxpayers' dollars, Mr. President, to train physicians. Most taxpayers don't know that. Billions of dollars to train physicians. Tax dollars through the federal treasury pay for over half the cost of what is spent in the totality of training a physician in America today. Now, that does not suggest that the federal government, on behalf of taxpayers, doesn't suggest that they should also have something to say in suggesting that the money be used to train the kinds of providers that Americans need and where they need them and in the right numbers. Taxpayers' money, public policy should follow behind that. That simply is what the workforce section in this bill is about, to make sure that we have the kinds of doctors to meet the needs of all Americans in West Virginia, in New York, in California, and in every other state.
But Pete Domenici of New Mexico, the ranking Republican on the Budget Committee, warned the Mitchell plan could hurt the country's fiscal health.
Now, as we move to improve the physical health of Americans, I believe it is imperative that we protect our nation's fiscal health, our budgets and our obligations and our taxes, all of which are our fiscal health. That in our rush to reform, we don't estimate or underestimate the costs and bankrupt this nation. Let me talk about the new taxes in this bill, and if the middle class feels put upon by previous taxes, they better hold on to their wallets. This new proposal has massive new taxes. Between 95 and 2000, 110 billion. Between 95 and 2004, nearly 300 billion. So let's add them together. In the next 10 years, it is $410 billion in new taxes. Now, I would note that I find it very hard to believe that these new taxes will help middle-class Americans, as the President's indicated.
Democrat Edward Kennedy of Massachusetts challenged Republicans to suggest changes to the Mitchell bill instead of just criticizing it.
Bipartisanship requires coming at least halfway. Coming halfway. And here we have the majority leader who has been trying to move that whole process, forward, and I would hope that at least in the remaining time, although there isn't a great deal more time on that side this afternoon, that we would at least have some areas of suggestions of recommendations prior to the time that we are going to come to the point of voting on these matters, where we can hear about where they're going to agree. Let's hear where they want to try and make some progress.
Republican John Chafee of Rhode Island came forward with recommendations for health care reform months ago, and even though his overall plan was defeated in committee, it attracted bipartisan support, and elements of it could be included in the final bill.
Doesn't it make sense for us to try for a bipartisan measure that keeps in mind the two objectives we all say we're for? I think if you ask people out here what are they for, they'd all say two things. We want to increase the number of Americans who have health insurance with our goal of eventually covering everyone. Everybody would agree with that, I think. Very few not. And secondly, our objective is to get costs lower for individuals, for companies, for state governments, and for the federal government. Cost containment. Nearly all of us pay tribute to the effectiveness of the marketplace. We all seem to subscribe to the notion of competition. There'd be very few people who get up on this floor of this Senate and say, I don't believe in competition. I don't believe in the effectiveness of the marketplace. We subscribe to the notion of competition, those of us in the mainstream. We're, for the most part, extremely skeptical of government intervention. So why can't we unite behind a bill that incorporates those beliefs? We don't have to achieve everything this year that we'd like to. There'll be other opportunities to deal with this subject, ascertain whether we should do more or less. I and all the other members of the mainstream group want to see good health care reform enacted this year. We'll do all we can to be helpful. We believe it's extremely important to have a bill with broad support. What am I talking about? 75 or 80 votes in favor. That's not an impossibility, rather than a measure that sneaks through 51 or 52.
Meanwhile, the Mitchell plan has gotten two bits of good news. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimated the bill would achieve 95% health coverage as early as 1997 and would slightly reduce the federal budget deficit. And the 33 million member American Association of Retired Persons endorsed both the Mitchell plan and Majority Leader Richard Gephardt's plan in the House.
Although neither bill is perfect, after careful review, we conclude that they provide the foundation for comprehensive health care for all Americans.
The first votes in the Senate on health care reform could come as early as Friday. Still ahead on the NewsHour, a crime bill debate, ways to stop teenage violence, and the paintings of Willem de Kooning.
Now, the congressional battle over the crime bill. Late last month, Senate and House conferees crafted a sweeping bill that vastly extends the federal role in the fight against crime. Included in the $33 billion bill are provisions to hire 100,000 new police officers, to build new state and local prisons, to fund community prevention efforts, to ban 19 assault weapons, and to expand the death penalty to dozens of new federal crimes. Passing the legislation is a top priority of President Clinton, and he stepped up his personal lobbying of members this week. But for the last 10 days, an unlikely coalition of black lawmakers and gun rights advocates has held up consideration of the measure in the House. Now we hear from Georgia Republican Newt Gingrich, who's the minority whip, and also he's going to be joined by Charles Schumer, Democrat Charles Schumer, who's the chairman of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime and Criminal Justice, and also Kwesi Mfume, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. They're on their way back from a vote in the House, and will be with us in a minute. Mr. Gingrich, explain to us in words the non-specialist can understand, what is blocking this bill now?
Well, the first thing that's blocking the bill is that the bill has not been reported, that the conference has not been reported. No Republican I know of has seen the bill. In fact, Mr. Schumer has been offering to rewrite parts of it if it'll get votes on the rule. So members are being asked to vote for a rule on a conference report which hasn't been filed, which they don't know what's in it. In fact, ironically, the only thing we know for sure is that a university in Chairman Jack Brooks' district has issued a 2-page press release thanking him for the $10 million grant he wrote into the bill for them, because they apparently were notified about their part of the bill, but nobody else was. So let me start with, there is no conference report yet. Second, the FBI director, President Clinton's FBI director, has said that the bill, in fact, will hurt both the FBI and the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. Now, most members don't want a crime bill which transfers money to social workers away from the FBI and the DEA. So I think there's a very, very deep suspicion there. Finally, Congressman Michael and I have sent a letter to the Democratic leadership saying that there are a number of issues that if they would negotiate with us, we would help them get the bill out of conference. That includes the Dole-Molinari bill on spouse abuse and on sexual crimes. It includes a provision that Congressman Zimmer and Jennifer Dunn are working on, which involves notifying a community when a sexual predator is released from jail. There was a tragic case in New Jersey just last week of a 7-year-old who was kidnapped, raped, and killed, and the predator had already been convicted twice and was released without the community knowing it. So we think there are both substantive policy issues, and we believe that there are issues involving amounts of money spent on social workers rather than police and prisons. And in addition, of course, there's the issue of whether it's better to ban guns or whether it's better to lock up criminals. One example, we have a provision which was taken out of the bill, which Republicans had put in, which said if you use a firearm in the commission of a felony, you get an additional 10-year sentence. That's stripped out of the bill. We think you ought to lock up criminals who use guns rather than focusing just on guns themselves. And so there are some substantive differences.
Let me ask you a question about the procedure here. President Clinton yesterday appealed to you all to not play what he called hide and seek in the Rules Committee, but come out and if there's going to be a shootout, have it at high noon in broad daylight.
I agree with President Clinton, but let me say the first thing he could do then is instruct his Democratic leadership to file the conference report so we get it out of the hide and seek that they are playing because they refuse to even give us the report. So if they'd like to file the report on the bill so we could see what's in the bill, it would be out in the open. But as usual, President Clinton only tells part of the truth. He's not telling you that they have literally not filed the bill, so nobody knows what's in it. But they want us to vote on a rule before they even show us the bill.
Well, Congressman Schumer and Congressman Fume are now with us. Congressman Schumer, is it you, as Mr. Gingrich suggests, who's playing hide-and-seek with this bill?
Well, you know, Newt he keeps changing his mind about why he's against the bill, and it leads one to doubt the sincerity of really wanting a bill. The bill, we know what the bill has been for a very long time. Originally it was we needed $8 billion for prisons. The bill has $8 billion of prisons. Then it was they couldn't vote for it because it had the Racial Justice Act. Now the Racial Justice Act is out. This morning Newt went on the floor and said that the FBI director's against the bill. We have a letter from the FBI director saying he's for the bill. Tonight, it's stuff on sexual predators. We'll change that. It'll be something else tomorrow. And what I would say to Mr. Gingrich in an appeal, this bill isn't going to have something everybody wants. Kwesi Mfume and the Black Caucus didn't get everything they wanted. Newt Gingrich and his Republican side didn't get everything they wanted. But overall, this is a bill with tough punishment, smart prevention. It's the most the federal government has ever done on crime. And my appeal to Newt would be stop the gridlock. These are differences. These are not differences that should override getting something done. And that is the problem.
Let me just
ask you. Wait, I would just say one thing.
I'll come to your moment, Mr. Gingrich, just a moment.
Yeah, I would just say one thing. You can pick little things in the bill you don't like, but you know that the vast majority of Americans want 100,000 cops on the beat, want the death penalty reinstated, want money to keep schools open so kids have a place to go. These are the kinds of things that are the mainstays of the bill. And instead of nitpicking, and every time one of your demands is met, finding another one, support the bill already.
Before I come back to you, Mr. Gingrich, I just want to bring Congressman Fume in and ask him, what reason do you see the bill as being blocked now? This bill that was supposedly going to be so popular that it would sweep through the Congress and now can't apparently get enough votes for a rule in the Rules Committee to get a vote on the floor.
Well, I think we are going to have enough votes to get a rule and to have that rule pass on the floor. But there's a lot of ideologues that have been standing up, as Mr. Schumer said, on point after point after point. Different people from different regions who are saying we can't do this without this, and then when you get it, they find something else. Nobody likes everything in this bill, but everybody understands the fact that crime is a real problem in our society. It has to be addressed. We have billions of dollars worth of prevention programs that are smart. There are tough sentencing guidelines in the bill. It has taken Congress 6 years to get to the point of passing a crime bill when it takes the average criminal 4 years to get out of jail. I don't know why we have to continue this way. I was always taught to believe that in this process, you compromise and you find a way to win. And that is what many of us have been trying to do, albeit the fact that we don't like everything in the bill. Some point in time, you got to fish or cut bait, and I would urge those members and others who keep saying we can't, to say that we can and we will.
Some of those members would be the 15, as I understand it, members of your Black Caucus who are still saying they won't vote for it unless the racial justice provision that Congressman Schumer referred to is reinserted, correct?
That's correct. There are members of the Republican caucus who have reasons that they won't vote for it. There are a few members of the Women's Caucus. There are a few members of the Hispanic Caucus. I think in every group you're going to find some people who have some problems with the bill that they can't themselves overcome. But leadership is about breaking gridlock. It's about moving forward and finding a way to take 2 steps forward toward trying to put something together instead of taking steps backwards as we have been doing.
So,
let me just
Congressman
say,
Gingrich, back
Robin, can I just make one other point?
Okay.
Kwesi Mfume and the Black Caucus made as their #1 demand the Racial Justice Act. Newt Gingrich must have given 50 speeches how they'd support the bill except for the Racial Justice Act. They didn't win. And here is Mfume swallowing hard and saying because of the other things in the bill and he doesn't want gridlock, he and the majority of the Black Caucus members will support it without the Racial Justice Act. And here is Newt Gingrich coming up with new example after new example after new example of why we can't pass the bill.
Okay, Congressman Gingrich, your turn.
Sure. I would just make 3 quick points. First of all, you have 2 very eloquent representatives from New York City and Baltimore. This is a wonderful pork barrel social spending bill for big city mayors. I appreciate that they want the money, and I don't blame them. I think that's a noble cause, and I'm sure they want to deliver lots of money to their mayors. I understand that. Second, I would just challenge Mr. Schumer on 2 counts. One, isn't it sort of odd that Chairman Brooks University has issued a press release on a $10 million pork barrel grant before any member of the Republican side has seen the bill. And to the best of my knowledge, no member of the Republican side who was in the conference has yet seen the final conference report. And two, would you just tell the audience, isn't it true that as of this evening, despite 10 days of pressure, you still have not filed a conference report? So you're asking me as an act of trust to give you my vote for a rule to bring to the floor a conference report that no member of my side has seen. And is it not just as a fact true that that conference report, as of this minute while we're sitting here, has still not been filed?
Here's what I'd say to Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich hasn't seen the conference report. He is twisting every arm available in his caucus to vote no on the bill before he sees what's in the bill. And so he is sort of saying, you know, once again, he's doing the same tactics he's accusing other people of. Second, about big city mayors, half the cops on the beat must go to localities under 150,000. There is money for rural crime prevention in here. And he says just the big city mayors support it. The sheriff's organizations throughout the southern and rural states, the police organizations throughout the southern and rural states all support the bill. The main reasons this bill is going down are two. Number one, because Newt Gingrich is leading the Republican Party to do everything they can to make the bill political and, quote, deprive President Clinton of a victory. My ranking member on the crime committee said and issued 2 press releases, Jim Sensenbrenner saying we can't let the Democrats take back the issue. I'd love this to be a bipartisan issue.
Let me just
and then second, the NRA is using 40 pro-NRA Democrats because we have virtually no Republican votes to block the bill.
That's what's happening. Just so this is a clean debate, let me go back to Congressman Gingrich on the charge. You really want to keep President Clinton from having a victory.
In the first place, I've told our members, the vote on final passage, as far as I'm concerned, is an individual member's vote based on your district and your final conclusion.
But if it can't get to the floor for final passage,
what I've said to him,
you'll never get the bill.
But let me go back to what I said. First of all,
sophistry, Newt.
Charlie, if I can just comment for a second. First of all, Bob Michael and Henry Hyde, Bill McCullum, and Dick Armey and I have sent a letter to your leadership saying here are the non-gun issues we'd like to negotiate, and we're prepared to help you bring a rule to the floor, even if it still has the gun provision, if we can negotiate these issues. Second, I think the average person out there deserves to know that we're not talking about peanuts here. This is a multi-billion-dollar, very large bill, and all the Republicans have been saying is, let us see the conference report, put it in writing, let us look at it before you ask us to say, yes, we'll vote for a rule. We're being asked to vote for a rule to bring to the floor a bill that you have not even allowed our members of the conference to see. I think that is an outrageous process, and I think it is bad legislation, and I just think that it's unfair for you to say that we ought to automatically give you a blank check to bring anything you guys want to write out of a conference when you don't include the Republican members, you don't share the information, you don't let them look at the language. And I will tell you, I've had one member today who finally got 5 pages on the issue of sexual predators, and he said he was shocked at how much worse that language is in your current bill than he thought it was, but he had not been able to see it until today.
Congressman Nfumi, let me go to you. Isn't it, with the public deeply concerned about the extent of crime in the country, isn't this the kind of situation that drives the voters crazy with the Congress? Because the procedural wrangling over these things is just so hard to understand outside your hallowed halls.
It clearly is, and it goes back to the point that I've been making. This is a bill, like most bills, in which there are a lot of things to find objection with. It's also a bill that has a lot of things that I think people in the street, day-to-day people, embrace. Many of the things were the priorities of the Congressional Black Caucus, making sure that we were able to put in place the assault weapons ban that Mr. Schumer led on, making sure that we had prevention money in there for cities, large and small, making sure also that we were able to deal with the issue of additional police and at the same time narrow the 3 strikes provision and deal with sentencing guidelines. People in the street understand that. They want a crime bill, and they can't understand 6 years to get one. And so when we talk as we do, because as part of the parlance, we talk about procedure and rules, I don't think people in the street see that as something that they focus on. They want to know, why aren't you moving? And I think they can appreciate it if the vote goes up or down, but they cannot appreciate the kind of gridlock that has been brought to bear by individuals who simply don't want to allow a vote. We ought to have a vote on this and let it live or die on its own merit.
Congressman Gingrich, since there are 2 Democrats here, let me come back to you. How do you respond to that about how do you explain to your own constituents your own district, this kind of procedural wrangling that won't permit a vote on something a lot of people appear to want?
It's not that complicated. This is a country where 77% favor term limits, where Congress is at the lowest all-time approval of its performance. All you do is say to the average viewer tonight, if the bill is as good as these two Democrats say it is, why are they afraid to print the conference report? Why are they afraid to put it out there and let it sit for 48 hours and let people see what's actually printed in the bill? I don't have people complain to me because Congress looks at every detail. I have people complain to me because we pass things without knowing what it is.
Congressman Schumer, why are you afraid to print it and put it out there?
You see, Newt is once again creating a smokescreen. This is his demand of the hour. This bill has gone through about 40 committee hearings, hundreds of hours of debate in the House and Senate. Every provision has been debated. The conference report is a technical thing that is finally drafted, and the staff people have been working day and night over the weekend to get it out. He knows, wait a second, Newt, let me finish. He knows what's in the bill. He knows that his demand that racial justice be dropped is not in the bill. He knows that the assault weapons ban, exactly as written in the House, is in the bill. He knows exactly where the money is spent. That was decided in open conference. It's only little bits of technical language that have no bearing on the major effect. And I dare say that if the bill came out now and we had no vote until Monday or Tuesday, which would give those who want to block it, mainly the NRA, when Newt Gingrich mentions polls, 80% support an assault weapons ban. He's opposing it. The vast majority of his party is opposing it.
Congressman, you haven't explained why the bill hasn't been printed.
It's just being finished. They were working. The conference finished. It takes hours to write all this technical stuff. And almost all of it is public. Every piece of it is public. In other words, as if you had 100 separate pages that have been public for months, and now that you have to bind them all together and write explanatory language that is technical in nature, that will be public too. It's public as of 5 o'clock today. And Newt is already telling his people vote no on bases that are false.
Let me ask each of you very quickly. Congressman Fume, what's going to happen?
Well, I think we're going to see the House work its will and bring the bill forward for a vote, and it will live or die on its merits in the light of day before the entire public of this country, as it should.
Is it going to live or die?
Oh, I think that it will pass the House as it passed the House before.
What do you think, Congressman Gingrich?
I think that it's important to recognize the conference report is not just technical language. It becomes the law of the land. It's the letter of the law.
Is the bill going to go up or down, would you say?
I think eventually we'll negotiate a way to get the bill to the floor, and I hope that they'll negotiate it soon. And I'm prepared to negotiate tonight or tomorrow morning to get it to the floor.
Congressman Schumer, you said today you needed 3 votes. Is that the way it is?
I would say, yeah, we're very, very close. There are a number of courageous Republicans who are breaking with their leadership because they know how important the bill is. It will depend on how many. If we get 10 Republicans, we'll lose. If we get 15 or 20, we'll win.
Sorry, Congressman, that's the end of our time. Thank you all three.
Thank you.
Next tonight, we continue our series on breaking the cycle of violence among young people. The NewsHour has devoted 2 nights each week to programs and people working to reduce violence among teenagers. Charlene Hunter-Gault has been talking to people with solutions.
Is that fair?
She has a reputation as a tough, no-nonsense judge.
You do not want to come back here and deal with me because I have a long memory, and I will remember that we had this conversation. You understand that? Yes.
Glenda Hatchett Johnson is chief presiding judge of the Fulton County Juvenile Court in Atlanta, Georgia. She's earned a reputation for innovative efforts aimed at breaking the cycle of violence among the young people who come into her courtroom as either its perpetrators or its victims. In the Atlanta area, violent crime by juveniles is up almost 30% in the past 5 years. It is Judge Johnson's belief that one of the greatest contributors to this problem of violent delinquency is truancy. That was this 15-year-old's problem.
Your Honor, this is a truancy review hearing in the interest of Marquez